The Mystery of the Shemitah, one of your great books. Since you were here last, you really confirmed so much that has begun. And we're in this year of Jubilee. So much has happened. Could you go over that? Because people always say, well, I thought something was going to happen with the Shemitah.
Since I was here, much came out confirming the things that we have said. And let me share that.
Can you do that?
Absolutely. And some things I'm going to share in some detail that I've never shared in any kind of format like this. So you're actually going to see this. Every time we speak, I always give a caution. God does not do anything the way we think he does, and you can't put a date on this. But the judgment has not yet come that I believe the Harbinger is foreshadowing. But the Shemitah absolutely did come, and several things came out since we were here. First of all, what happened to the stock markets of the world in the Shemitah? One of the things is that what happened? British markets, 16% wiped out. French markets, 18% wiped out. German markets, 25% wiped out in the Shemitah. India, the Shemitah wiped out 4,000 points. Brazil, the Shemitah wiped out 12,000 points. America, the Shemitah wiped out $2 trillion from the markets. Around the world, the Shemitah wiped out $11 trillion. I want to show you if they have the graph. Show Wall Street if you have that. That's what the Shemitah did to Wall Street. Look, that's the year 2000. Do the next one.
Did that drop?
It was around the world. The next one, you have the United Kingdom. That's what the Shemitah did to the United Kingdom, that right there. Next one, I believe we have France. The Shemitah did to France over there. Next one, Australia. And that's also around the world, Australia. And then you have India. The Shemitah struck India as well. That's right there. Canada. That's what the Shemitah did to Canada. China has become the center of the world. If we were in China, we wouldn't even be talking about this, because what happened in China, first of all, people don't realize it. In 2009, China became the largest exporter nation in the world. In 2013, it became the largest trading nation, surpassed America. 2014 became the largest economy. So that all happened. So now the Shemitah tends to focus on where this is the engine of the world economy. What happened to China? Show the graph of China. In the Shemitah, what the Shemitah did to China is the Shemitah wiped out 43% of the financial realm of China. 43%. And that alone would be gigantic, but it did it all in 2.5 months. That makes it probably the greatest crash in world history, what happened to China. The predominant pattern in the mystery of the Shemitah is that of a rising stock market, and then it begins a long-term collapse, which is exactly what... This has happened in the last 7 of them. From 2008, Great Recession. 2001, everything. 1994, the bond market massacre. 1987, Black Monday. 1980, the recession. 1973, recession. 1966, the last 7, you had collapses. You had the same exact thing happened in this Shemitah as well. Now, it didn't have to happen, but it did. Now, I'm going to show you a graph where you can see the bigger picture. And what you're going to see is, you'll see a graph of the rising stock market last few years, and then you're going to see a pink period. That's the Shemitah. Look what happened to the stock market, rising for years once the Shemitah came. The Shemitah turned it around from a rising stock market to a descending one. That's America. Show Germany. Look what happened in the Shemitah, rise, falls. Show the United Kingdom. Rising for years, Shemitah comes, look what happens. Wow. Since we were here, the 2015 ended. All over the web, all over they took account of what happened, and this is the headline of what the Shemitah did. Let's see that, the headline. It was the worst year since when? 2008. How many years? 7 years. Wow. 2015 was the worst year since 2008, which is not only 7 years, it just happens to be the Shemitah. Show the next one there. Just show some headlines from that. Wall Street records worst year again since 2008. The next one. 2015, worst year. It's the first time since the last Shemitah that Wall Street finished in the red. So this is not Christian news sites. This is Wall Street Journal. That alone, the fact is that the predominant pattern totally happened exactly as it was to be. Not the way maybe we can have ideas of it, but it happened exactly so. Wiped it out. But there's much more, because we'll see as we go on that it not only wiped out Wall Street, it wiped out global trade, collapsed, commodities, oil collapsed, industrial production collapsed, everything. It's still collapsing, by the way. Well, I'll share that, and I'll show it to you visually. So it's not a matter of feeling. It's not a matter of our talk. It's absolute real. God is very real. He's very exact. He is in charge of everything, including Wall Street, including our bank accounts.
Yes.
He's that much in charge.
Yes.
Well, I really want to hear more of this, and throughout this week,
we'll do it throughout.
you're going to give us some more
and I'm going to show you
of what's really going on now.
First of all, one of the things in the Harbinger and in the Mystery of the Shemitah, you'll actually see the words appear. It says the effects of the Shemitah, the repercussions, not only affect the financial realm, but the realm of production, consumption, and trade. Because in the Bible, when you had the Shemitah, the land stopped producing. They didn't have industry like we do, but they had production. The land stopped producing. They stopped selling the fruit, so trade stops or decreases. And well, in the modern times, that translates to trade and all those things. So here's the question. Did the Shemitah affect not just the stock market, all that, but actually all these other realms? And I want to show you something. If you have global trade, you have the headline on global trade. This is what happened. This is what the Shemitah did to global trade. Plummets 70%. 70% in 3 weeks.
Wow.
Let's do the next one, a global trade. Is collapsing. Was literally the Shemitah, really, in that time, it collapsed. Next one, world trade. It's biggest since when? 2008, the other Shemitah. Again, and this is not Christian, this is secular. Okay. The next one, I believe they have one more. In free fall, literally, I mean, this is one of the most uncovered stories of the last year, and that is that global trade has totally collapsed. I mean, to this day. Now, here we have a graph. In a moment, you're going to see the pink area represents the Shemitah. This is world imports. Look at what happened at world imports. You see it's high up with the blue?
Yes. Then
once the Shemitah comes, look what happens. It goes down and below that level. It collapses to nearly half. There's something called the Baltic Dry Index. Let me tell you what that is. And you have to know, we don't know a lot. But it measures basically shipping and world trade. Well, see the headline on the Baltic Dry Index, what the Shemitah did to the Baltic Dry Index. This year, it was the worst in 30 years. But the fact is, the Baltic Dry Index only existed for 30 years, so it's the worst ever in the history of the world. Show the next one. Their Baltic Dry Index, I believe you have an all-time low, totally collapsed. I'll give you an example. You know, the Shemitah was 2014, 2015. 2014 began, the Baltic Index was at 2,000. By the end of 2015, it was at 400. It wiped out like 80% of it. Okay. Another thing you'll read.
No, that's trade. That's
trade. It's not speculation like the markets. It's real trade and goods. Yeah, and that's going to bring it to the next one. One of the things you'll see in the Harbinger on the Mystery of the Shemitah, that chapter, and I believe in the Mystery of the Shemitah, is also that says in the Shemitah, the fruit of the land is abandoned. So therefore, today, economically, we'd expect commodities to be unsold, piling up, merchandise to pile up. Well, look, demand dries up. Look what happened to commodities. Commodity slump, 16-year low. This is the Shemitah. Next one. Worst year for dry bulk commodities worst year on record was the Shemitah. Now, I'm going to show you a chart from Bloomberg News on what happens at the Shemitah and the commodity market. Let's see that graph. Look what happened.
Wow.
Look what happened as it approaches the end of the Shemitah. Wipeout.
Hits bottom.
Now, one of those. This is what happened. This is what this is one of the biggest stories, and most people haven't heard it. The other thing is what happened to another commodity called oil. Let's see the next graph, and I want you to see something here on oil. Now, that's by 14 years. You see with the pink?
Yeah.
The first pink is 2008 Shemitah. Look what happened to oil.
Crash.
Second pink is 2015. Look what happened to oil.
Down the same.
So this is the Shemitah. Now you go to the gas station.
And we're right there. We're down in that bottom right now, aren't we?
You go to the gas station and you can thank the Shemitah for that. The collapse of trade has not stopped. And if you look at this next one, this is what happened to this point around where we are right now. It's continued to collapse. God is very, very, very real. In the book, in both things, the overall pattern is exactly this, that it affects every realm. And even though I haven't yet touched on the dramatic day crashes, which we will, it even affected that too. But this is the absolute pattern that you'll read in the books.
Trillions of dollars crashed at the beginning of the Shemitah, and most people just kind of, well, nothing really happened.
Yeah, or actually at the climax when it should have.
Yeah.
You know, believers are believers, and meaning, okay, it's the end of the world, the rapture. That's not what it was. But the predominant pattern of the Shemitah is a long-term collapse, which is exactly what happened. We've shown. I didn't want to just say it like this is our feeling or this is our opinion. I've showed you actual charts of what happened. 2015 was the worst year since 2008, the other Shemitah, for the stock market, for trade, for everything collapsed. We spoke about the stock market. We spoke about global trade, which is, by the way, still at its collapse. It's still all over the world. Well, that's in the Harbinger, and that's in the Shemitah. It says these things will happen. If you look at it, it talks about trade. It talks about all those things. But now let's take to another realm. Another realm in the Harbinger and in the Shemitah, it says this. Literally, the Shemitah causes production to decrease or decline. Production. Now, what it means is, I said that the land didn't produce. During the Shemitah, you're not getting stuff produced from the land. So today, it would be not only, it would be the land, but it's also its production. So did the Shemitah of 2015, what did it do? Did it do anything to the world's production? Now, I want to show you, I believe we have a headline, China's factories, if you have that there. This is what happened. China is the engine of the world economy. What happened in the Shemitah? It was the longest contraction in 6 years, which is basically the plummeting of the last Shemitah. Next one. Next headline there. China December factory activity shrinks for 10 months straight. What about, it happened all over there. What about America's industrial production? Next one. U.S. production, it collapsed. Actually, production collapsed all over the world. All over the world. Now, I want to show you a graph that talks about manufacturing, and you're going to see two pink periods. The two pink periods are the two Shemitahs. The last Shemitah, look what happens to production during it, collapses. This Shemitah, it collapses as well. Production collapsed here. Look what the Shemitah did to production. Look what it did.
Wow.
It's still, and after to this, it still collapsed. Now, also, it says in the Harbinger and the Shemitah that the Shemitah will affect merchandise, because during the Shemitah, the fruits of the land would be abandoned. So they kind of piled, nothing would be done. Well, what about the fruits of merchandise, retail? Let's look at this next graph. It's showing that first peak is 2008, 2009, last Shemitah. That's showing how much merchandise is unsold, has been piling up. And now, as this Shemitah came, it started piling up. The same thing, merchandise piling up. We have a headline. What happened to the retail section there? Massive collapse. The Shemitah caused a massive collapse of retail. Next one. I like this title. Retail apocalypse. 6,000 stores closed. Next one. Retail sales in U.S. decreased worse since 2009, which is the end of the other Shemitah. Now, I want to show you one other thing here. In the Hebrew, it talks about, in Leviticus, it says this. If you shall say, what shall we eat in the 7th year, the Shemitah? We shall not sow, nor gather in our increase. Well, the word for increase there is the Hebrew word called tebuah. Tebuah means increase, it means fruit, but it also means income and revenue and earning. So, this could be translated that during the Shemitah, will it touch earning, income, and revenue? I want to show you now a chart of what happened to earnings from the Shemitah. Look at what, the pink is the Shemitah, the 2015. Look what it did to earnings in America.
It goes under the chart.
It goes
where
under.
Where the level was.
Negative. Negative. Yeah. I'll show you one more chart, and then I'm going to ask you one question. But one more chart is U.S. corporate profit. Look at what happened to profit when the Shemitah came. Look what happened. That's tebuah. That's the earnings. That's what the Bible says. Now, this segment, I'm going to ask you one question. 2015, the Shemitah, was the worst year. It was the worst year to earn money in how many years? What do you think?
8 years.
Well, you think, because a lot of these things are the worst since the last Shemitah.
The last Shemitah.
The answer is 2015, the Shemitah was the worst year to earn money in 78 years.
Oh, my.
Wow.
Show the headline.
Wow.
That is literal headline. The worst year to make money in 78 years. Where does that take you to? It takes you to the Great Depression. It takes you to 1937, the second part of the Great Depression. 1937 was the year of the Shemitah. So that's how much this thing manifested.
Wow.
And before before I leave and all, I'll show you one more thing really amazing about what happened in the month of Elul. But we'll get to that. But that is just an idea of what has happened and how real it is.
I think one of the most important things to talk about this week is the Shemitah. And so many people didn't notice hardly what was being fulfilled.
Right.
So we saw the stock market, financial realms, and then we saw global trade just literally collapse.
Commerce,
Production collapsed.
What happened in the Shemitah has not stopped. You had a whole another wave of stock market collapses as this year opened, as you know. And the trade is at levels they cannot even understand it. I mean, I mentioned the Baltic Dry Index, which is the trade, global trade. At the beginning of 2014, when the Shemitah began in 2014, went to 2015, beginning of 2014, The Baltic Trade Index was at 2,000. By the end of the Shemitah, end of 2015, it was at 400. So it had crashed by 80%, where they don't even understand what's going on. They don't even know why, you know. But that's if you read the Harbinger and the Shemitah, it actually talks about trade, all those things that would happen. I'm going to bring this last part, I'm going to call it the Elul factor.
Okay.
It says in the Bible, in Deuteronomy, it says at the end of every 7 years, you'll have a release of debts. So you will have a remission. The financial realm gets affected. There's a wiping out, a wiping clean. When does it happen? The end of the 7th year is the month of Elul. That's the last month on the civil calendar. Elul, leading up to Elul 29. Now, we already saw in some of the last Shemitahs, it was so precise that actually on the day you have the greatest crashes, you know, period. But the overall thing, you have Elul, the month of nullification. So the question is now, did the Shemitah of 2015 actually see great day crashes, day collapses there? Well, listen to the answer of this. 20% of the worst stock market day crashes in history happened in the Shemitah of 2015. 20% of them. 20% of the greatest crashes of that. And we're going to get even more specific. 20%. And actually, if you go a little bit more than the top 10, you got 30%. You have 3 of the top 10 crashes ever. Now, but when you get to the end of the Shemitah, this Elul period, you often have some, didn't have to happen, but you have some dramatic things happening in world history. Attack of 9/11 happens the last week of Elul. This is the time of nullification. World War II comes to its conclusion last week of Elul of the Shemitah, of the 7-year Shemitah, just like 9/11. The Shemitah of 2001 sees the greatest collapse in history the last week of the Shemitah Elul. So the 2008. Now, I've noted throughout the year when people ask me about that, I said, well, again, God, you can't put God in a box. But the pattern is that it tends to, if you're looking for dramatic tends to happen at the end of the Shemitah, at this period, this Elul, you know, this period. Well, when is this Elul period? This year, when was it? It began in August. August. Did anything interesting happen in August? Well, I want you to see this now. Look at, first you're going to see is the German stock market. Now look at the pink there. The pink isn't the Shemitah. The whole thing is the Shemitah. Pink is the month of Elul, right there. Now we're narrowing it down to the month. Look what happens to the stock market when Elul comes. This is how specific it is. This is the culmination of the Shemitah. Look what happened to the British market. Once Elul, it's already coming down through the Shemitah, but look what happens once Elul comes. Let's look at the Dow Jones Industrial, Wall Street. It's going down from the Shemitah. Look what happens when Elul comes. Ooh. Crash. Let's look at the next one.
Major.
That is China. China's already been crashing, one of the greatest of the Shemitah, but Elul, another one there. Notice when everything happened, it was August. Notice what you had. Black Monday. China's Black Monday. Dow. Let's actually put up some headlines. This is what happened all in Elul. This happened in the Elul of the Shemitah. Global Dow plummets, the worst intraday crash in Wall Street history, Elul. Global markets all collapse on Elul. Everything went crazy. Hundreds of billions wiped out in Elul. In fact, when I told you that 20% of the greatest crashes happened in the Shemitah, it wasn't just that. 20% of the greatest crashes in the history of Wall Street happened in the month of Elul of the Shemitah. I mean, 20% in the month of Elul. Now, I'm going to show you some last things here, but I want you to see it because it's very striking if you realize what's going on here. This is going to be the top 10 day crashes in Wall Street history. If you take it statistically, how many of those greatest 10 crashes should happen in the year of a Shemitah? It should actually be, statistically, if nothing's going on, 1 out of 7, we should see. In a moment, we're going to light up yellow if any of these happen during the year. It should be about 1 should be in yellow. But let's see what happens. 70% of the top crashes in history happened in the year of the Shemitah, or at the climax of the Shemitah. 70%. Actually, can even add another one. One of them happened in the same year, which is 2000, which was the year of Shemitah. Right before it, that would be 80%. 70%, the majority happened, only a minority happened in a non-Shemitah year. You're going to see it on a graph that's going to show you where those things happen, and the pink is the Shemitah. Those are the last 3 Shemitahs. Look at the greatest crashes. Look at where they happen in the Shemitah. Now I'm going to show you one last thing here now. We saw 7 of those crashes. Those are 70% of the top crashes in Wall Street history. Right there. That's the last 14 years or 15 years, whatever, or actually from the 90s. Now in one moment, before I want you to see what we're going to do. One moment we're going to take not just the month, we're going to take Elul 29, the day of nullification. We're going to put it on that graph and to see how close the 70% of the greatest crashes happen to the day that God appointed. Put up the graph.
Wow.
Every single one of them happens within 99% to 100% proximity to the day God appointed to wipe out the financial realm. And when I came the first time, I mean, when I came a little while back, I couldn't even, that last part is 2015. It showed up just as well. There, nothing before it, but at 2015. So the same way, so that's how precise this thing is. That's how precise it was. And 2015, it happened just as well. And you have two of those greatest crashes right in there.
My.
This is worldwide.
Yes.
And this is something that American Christians don't seem to get, that God is a God of the entire world. Because it's somehow, if it doesn't happen here the way they think it should happen here, but and it did happen here.
It did happen here, but here's another thing. The Shemitah, generally, it strikes the focus of the world economy, which has always been America, until this Shemitah. This Shemitah, it switched to China. And the Shemitah, what it did to China, it wiped out almost half of its financial realm in 2.5 months. Probably the greatest crash in history.
The Shemitah has overwhelmingly taken place, just as you wrote about it in your book.
Yeah.
And yet, I think it is so big that people can't see it. It's like the forest. You can't see the trees.
This is not even including the fall. America, from the American age that began in 1871 as the greatest economic power on earth, that came to an end during the Shemitah. Talk about fall. I mean, that's gigantic. That's gigantic. On top of other falls as well. But yeah, in fact, we're going to update the Shemitah too. We're going to add all these things because